So let's imagine there is something and someone who is surrendering something. And as we allow our attention to sink back into itself and evaporate, the luminous, energetic sense of being here seemingly becomes the dominant characteristic of indivisible experience. Simply put, here we are. Allowing, by the surrendering of the activities of thinking, feeling, sensing and perceiving, ourselves to notice that which has never once left. The word we'll use tonight is awareness. So notice the experience of being aware. And as we surrender the activities of the day into the waning summer sun as it dips over the horizon, let's allow ourselves to wane, to dip over the horizon of doing, and allow at the same time for the rising of the evening of being. This divine sunset. This luminous, shining light. Measured by its indivisible relationship to shadow and darkness. Any echoes of the day, any thoughts, images, feelings, sensations are just that. They are just echoes. They are now what is, but only as echoes of what is by now no longer happening. But what is happening are echoes of something no longer happening. We usually erroneously call this memory. And here we are saying there is no memory, just as there is no future, no plans, no timeline in front of us. These are all mental concepts and constructs that rise and fall collectively, individually, and regardless of that, essentially one at a time. in, or apparently in, what is. To be clear, no one has ever, nor can ever, be anywhere but here. We must see that even when we think about what was or what will be. We remain present. We are. And as the imagination once more fires up what we might say, something that was, we are captivated by this imagination and drift off into images, thoughts and feelings in the present. That has no relationship to the past, without a concept and meaning called the past. Same with the future. Some of the feelings that might arise out of this ruminating are fear, worry, anxiety. Similarly, we may feel regret or remorse. Or maybe we feel sadness or solace or loss about something beautiful. In an absolute sense, that which arises is arising as a movement of consciousness. So in fact, as the forms of the material world, of the personhood, of the body-mind, evaporate, people, places and things, their forms evaporate and only pure consciousness remains. That from which we are never born has remained and still remains. And the rising of a face, a moment, is arising a movement of consciousness. This is to newly experience, in an absolute sense, what has always been here, where we have always been, where we are, where we have never once left and where we never will leave. Here we are undivided, unbroken, divine, where we are love. Such imagination, such thought, such feeling, we think takes us out of the present as we drift off into narrative concepts of past and future. We imagine the story. We become the story. We claim the story. And we are addicted to the idea that the story defines who we are and is the meaning to our life and gives meaning. If what arises is deemed to have negative meaning, then we apply hope or a desire to escape that which we label as negative. We resist and flee what was. In so doing, allow it the power over us. And here we are pointing to awareness or consciousness or simply being invited to develop a relationship with our true nature, as which all things, objects, thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions, imagination, narratives, stories come and go as movements of awareness, concepts that rise and fall. And here we are noticing, being interested in that in which they rise and fall. We might say the space in which the I thought arises. Taking ourselves to be the thinker, we try to think our way out of the whole thinking empire, past, processing the present, the future, the story. But this self-concept cannot bring about its own end as much as it would like to. Because the spaciousness in which thought arises, feelings arise, sensations arise, appears as the end of the thinking empire. The empire crumbles. And of course the empire strikes back. And soon, within a matter of seconds, activity occurs, thought arises. And the thinking narrative's intention is entirely honourable and loving. It wishes, it seeks, it hopes to find peace and happiness. Continually modulating, manoeuvring, external and internal objects, from thoughts and feelings to people, places and things, in order to constantly, momentarily bring about an apparent equilibrium. At the end of the thinking inquiry, when understanding is reached, thought temporarily stops. Very quickly. Maybe the thought arises, this is nice. Or, how can we find more of this? Or, can we find a better experience of this? Now, the narrative or the answers to those questions aren't important to the thinking paradigm. The activity of thinking and creating a life for itself is its only concern. The Buddhists call this the monkey mind. We've said the empire strikes back. Once we identify with how we think and feel about an experience, we have identified as the owner of the thoughts and feelings, the person, the identity as a separate self. And hearing this message, we first move along a path of having thoughts and feelings about the thoughts and feelings, how we can have less negative ones, more positive ones, or how we can capture more spaces in between the thoughts. We first realize the separation between the activities of thinking, feeling, sensing and perceiving, and the space in which these rise and fall. And soon these questions must also evaporate as we embody the realization that the thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions are not in fact separate from this sense of luminous presence, this energetic sense of simply and ordinarily being. How could they be? A thought arises as a movement of presence, a feeling arises as a movement of presence. Presence is unchanged by movements of itself. The thoughts and the feelings themselves don't know anything. Movement is movement, not meaning. Be knowingly. This which is known. And become disinterested in the objects that are known. has any thought or feeling ever endured, whether happiness or despair, whether ecstasy or misery. But as far back as we can imagine in the present, has there not constantly been something we usually call I or me, as a seeming witness of the rising and falling of the movements we usually call life? And like most people, we are critically concerned with the objects of our lives, feelings, thoughts, imagined events no longer happening, plans about improving things. And in so doing, neatly, subtly overlooking this radically present sense of simply and ordinarily being constantly okay. As we say, without thought, setting aside the whole thinking infrastructure, instead of trying to fight the empire, we simply turn around and go the other way. And realize that we are the rebellion. We are Jedi. Can you feel the Force? Can you feel the Force?